welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast.
Hey Mike, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
Hi Danny, I'm good, thank you, and it's thank you very much for inviting me on as well.
No, the pleasure is all mine. So Mike, usually the first thing I do is I ask my guests to pick four numbers from 1 to 100. So go for it.
Oh, 9, 58, 72, and 88.
Perfect. We will come back to them a little bit later on.
Okay.
So usually I ask my guests to kind of summarise herself with a logline. Mike, can you remember what your logline was?
Oh, it was something like making the most of what I've got and loving every minute of it.
Okay.
Which took me a while actually to kind of think through. It's not easy actually, but yeah, I think that I'm happy with that. I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, and we will definitely come into that again in a sec. So Mike, I guess one of the opening questions really is kind of when you was in school and the teacher would come up to you and say, Mike, what is it you want to be? Or Michael, what is it you want to be when you grow up? What is it you would say to that teacher?
Yeah, well, I was definitely Michael at school.
Yeah.
I didn't, it's funny really when you look back at sorts of things. When I look back at the sort of things I was thinking about doing, my earliest memory of something I wanted to do was to be a transport policeman, or transport police officer. I haven't got the faintest idea why. Not a clue. I mean, not just a police officer, a transport police officer. I to this day I don't know. I mean, if I remember rightly, I even remember ringing up a program age 9. My mum made me ring up to have a talk to somebody that was on the radio about being a transport police officer. So how bizarre. But I actually got more seriously into kind of catering and being a chef and cooking at home. I did a lot of cooking. I got a bit older, my early teens. I kind of thought a chef, but actually then thinking sort of hotel management. Clearly decided not to go in and do that. I think I like the idea of, I don't know really. I guess I knew about hotels a bit. I like the idea of being involved in running one. So those things, and I've clearly, I ended up in the end actually going into sort of teaching, youth work originally, and then formal education for many years. So I kind of really didn't follow those pathways at all.
Wow. Okay. I mean, even just them two had two completely opposite ends of kind of jobs. It's an interesting one. It's I think our imagination when we're children is awesome because we can kind of, we're always curious, right? It's kind of, that's just the nature of children, I guess. But I guess, Mike, before, we and you have engaged on LinkedIn and whatnot. I think we've been at a couple of kind of events and at the same time and stuff. But maybe from our listeners who don't know who you are, maybe you could give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour of kind of where you've come from, right the way through to kind of where you are now.
Yeah. So I suppose I've had a bit of a change over years. So I suppose basically I went in originally when I was younger, much younger, into youth work for a few years, and I hadn't been to university, and without boring people too much, I got to age 24, 23, 24, and was kind of worried I was getting a bit old. and kind of decided I to kind of look at another career. I went to uni where I did social sciences and loved those. And interestingly enough, my academic subjects I did, which was psychology and sociology, and my youth work that I'd done previously, I kind of was able to marry those together, which led me into the world of further education. And spent 22 years doing that until just about 3 years ago. And got into management, senior leadership roles across the further education sector. So I suppose I've been involved in designing learning and running organisations and leadership management and organisational management for much of my career, really. But without, but briefly, I took a view a couple of years ago that, the world of further education, the public sector is a tough old place to be, lots of changes. And I kind of looked ahead 15 years until I retire one day, hopefully, and I thought, I'm not sure I want to be doing this for the next 15 years. And I guess I took a bit of control of where things were for me. And I don't know at the time, I didn't know if it's brave or foolhardy. 3 years on, I'm very happy. So I guess, whether it's brave or not, it was the right decision. And I took a bit of time out of my further education life and started looking around at what I wanted to do. And the more I looked at it and thought about it, I realized that learning and development was kind of where my passion was, passion from working with people in designing learning, passion with working with people in organizations to help them be better in their jobs, which is what I was starting to do a lot in my senior roles in colleges, actually, though I hadn't really thought about it as learning development, because I was in a learning organization anyway. So I kind of thought about it as just, helping people be better teachers, helping people help students to be more successful. But when I analysed it and had that time, which I was lucky to have time to reflect, I realised that actually it was that I wanted to do. It was helping people do their jobs, helping develop people, helping organisations develop and be better and be more effective. And so, that took me out to a couple of years ago. In the last 2 and a bit years, I've been in what you'd call corporate learning development, and until recently, a big FTSE 250 company, and literally 3 months ago moved to where I am now, at Emerald Group. So I suppose I kind of class myself as new to the world of learning development. And when I made that move a couple of years ago, I kind of entered into a whole new world, literally. And I could talk about that if need be later, but via social media, and particularly via Twitter, I kind of view it as a whole door opens up, and I came into literally a whole new world of my life. My professional life has literally been revolutionized as a result of that, and to some extent my personal life, but definitely my professional life. It's a whole new world for me. So I was about to start singing there. It is a whole new world, literally, and I won't get started for too long, so I can literally go on forever about how my life has changed, and the world of L&D has helped with that, and the world of Twitter and the people I've met and the contacts I've met. So I now work as a learning and organisational development manager at Emerald Group. People may know them for owning for good practice and towards maturity, and Mind Tools being part of that business. And there's a whole academic publishing part of it as well. And that's what I do. And I've been there since February and loving it.
Cool. So yeah, maybe you could maybe give us a kind of a snapshot into kind of what a standard day looks like for Mike. And this can be from when you wake up, or this can be from the minute you get in the office.
Well, in terms of my day, it depends whether I'm working from home or going into Bingley. I tell you, if I'm going into Bingley, I get up, the alarm goes off at 5:30. If I'm working from home, it goes off at 8:30. So that's quite a big thing. But I mean, I'm still in the early days working there, and really the challenges are around. I suppose the key things I'm been in the middle of working really are around really trying to put a sort of strategic structure to the way in which the L&D function is working, and a large part of my work at the moment is really having lots and lots of conversations with the business leaders and managers and people across the business, and doing that digging. I mean, I guess, it might be called needs analysis, or I often refer to it in the business as a business analysis, because I'm really looking to link what we're doing with obviously what the business needs are. So a lot of my time at the moment is really still talking to people. I'm going to be going out to other bits of the business around the UK in the next couple of weeks to really have some more in-depth discussions with them, trying to get my under the skin of it. And that's particularly the case for bits of the business I'm not familiar with. So a big bit of the business, this historic part that's been in place over 50 years, is the academic publishing. Now, I understand academic publishing from the side as a user. I've been a student and I use journals and books and stuff. But understanding it from the publishing parts and the publisher side is very new. So I've been really kind of trying to get my head around kind of how the publishing process works. The difference between editors and publishing editors and senior publishing editors is still slightly confusing to me. But it's been lots of discussion. And then also, I suppose the other element's been really working with my team to really get them on board with kind of a new way of working. And I suppose really it's very much around having those discussions with people and exploring ways of working that are not about just running courses, and moving away from that sort of more traditional approach, and really trying to sort of show the sort of path of a different way in which organisations can develop and people can learn and develop. And some really interesting pieces of work I've been working on really at the moment have been really good, some good code delivery work, particularly around values and culture and behaviours, and sort of visioning work as well. And what's been good about that is, I've been able to really do that with teams. That's helped me understand the business more, but it's also helped people, I guess, get a sense of how we can do some of this stuff. And so really, yeah, I've been having some brilliant conversations. It sounds like I just sit around having cups of tea chatting all day. Well, I do. No, I don't. So it's hard to give a typical day, but that's the sort of stuff I'm working on. And obviously it's a nice balance between getting in front of people, delivering things, doing some workshop work, starting to look at some of the things we use, the platforms we have, the resources we have in place to really help people use those. But it's I forgot how hard it is and how long it can take to really get your head around and you're under the skin of an organisation, to really feel it. And I'm lucky at Emerald to be able to do that in a way that maybe previous role in a FTSE 250 was just near impossible to do. But in a company Emerald size and nature, it's easier. Not easy, but easier.
It's interesting though, I guess kind of what you're describing right now is that newbie onboarding experience, right? It's kind of, I think getting time in with people and understanding their world and their challenges and whatnot is kind of something what tends to be overlooked a lot of times in onboarding. And just actually people design this thing, but actually miss out something as simple as get a brew, sit down and have a chat. It's kind of, I think it's good for people to kind of be the newbie. Not often all the time, but it's always quite humbling to kind of go right back and be the newbie into a business, because you as much as we try to use this kind of empathize and this human-centered design approach, actually being new is being new. There's no two ways around it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and actually I have enjoyed that. In many respects, being the newbie and being there the first couple of months is in some ways easier in as much as, I don't know, maybe expectations are not set yet. And I think I'm lucky because I've been given the opportunity to do that and take a little bit of time, because I guess there's a risk in places. And this very much relates to induction onboarding, that people are expected to kind of get stuck in and get involved and get doing stuff immediately. And of course, some roles involve that. But I would say my getting stuck in and doing stuff was that having lots of conversations, talking to people, asking questions, maybe sometimes stupid questions, particularly when I was talking to some of the people in publishing, because I'm like, I don't get this. And it's like, if you sometimes some of the more obvious questions elicit some of the really interesting answers, and sometimes answers people hadn't been made to think about certain things. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoy meeting new people, getting into new places. I've always enjoyed joining new organisations. It's just been good this time to just have that little bit of space. But I think you're right about onboarding, and indeed we're looking at that ourselves. And I'm able to use hopefully some of my own experiences recently to help impact on that, because I think I don't think there's a one size fits all for onboarding either for people, and it's that balance, I guess, between kind of what an organisation wants overall versus what a localised team or department need from people. But if people come into organisation and don't get that right and don't feel good, don't feel they understand it, and particularly don't get where they fit in it, I think that can be problematic longer term. So a little bit of time at the beginning, I think, yields really positive results for people longer down the line, further down the line.
Yeah, definitely. I think I say this quite a lot because onboarding is like a real passion of mine, and I think it's very rare you get these opportunities where the people who you're going to be bringing in, or the people who you're going to be working with, i.e. the newbies, they're so open to it, they're excited, they're already in this kind of real positive mindset a lot of the times. So a lot of the hard work is kind of done because they're open to this and they're taking everything in. But yeah, it's just kind of one of them things what, if untapped, it ends up being a massive missed opportunity. So whenever I kind of start a new role, I tend to do a journal for the first 3 months. So I log all my frustrations, I log what, my positives, my frustrations and whatnot. Because I know at some point I'm going to come around to that redesigning this kind of onboarding at some point, and it's kind of like, okay, that's where I've got this raw data, so to speak, of my own feelings.
Yeah, it's really good. You know what? I started doing that for the first week, and I didn't carry it on. I'm just I find doing things by say having a habit of something really tough, and actually that was one of the things that kind of went by the way. Though a lot of it's in my head. But interesting enough about people being new and being open. And I read it. I can't remember who said it now, but someone on Twitter the other week was talking about something, and the point was made. And this is good for learning development. You get in with people when they're keen and eager and open. So I'm, really keen that we go and have conversations with people when they arrive, when they're there early, and you have them in their first couple of, the first few days, when you can kind of present in this context, present kind of how we work from a development perspective at the business, get people to understand this isn't, for me, it's helping people not to think, oh yes, learning development is just going on a course. There's a list of things to go on and get involved with. It's not that. And I think people, depending what their own background and experiences have been previously, won't always get that. So I'm keen to kind of get them when they're eager, and before they get sort of too manic with work, try and set the tone with them.
Yeah, and it's kind of that kind of when coming from a corporate kind of moving into a consultancy back world, me now, I think that's the first thing you see in kind of this corporate, especially corporate onboarding. You kind of see, they come in very eager and, and if done right, then L&D becomes this really, really positive channel. But if done wrong, half the time we don't even know an L&D team exists. And it is about kind of, like say, tapping into that when they're kind of eager and excited and open, I guess, is how I see it.
Yeah, so I'm so determined that people don't look at, L&D as, in that traditional way, which, really would and does frustrate me. It's not that function just to go to when there is a problem, or it's not just that function to call upon when, or where's the list of, the year's courses so we can work out what we like the look of and go to,
Yeah, where's a catalogue of things I can book onto to show that I'm developing? That kind of stuff.
Oh gosh, absolutely. But that takes time to change in places. I mean, it's still, for all the talk that, in the sort of network I'm in and we're in and with people we meet and talk with, for all the talk around the changes and how we're working and, talking about 70-20-10, talking about digital strategy, whatever it might be, there's so many bits to business, so many businesses, so many organizations around the country that are doing stuff in the sake of a better term, in the old-fashioned way. And I'm not pretending that I do it brilliantly yet, but I think it's about at least having those conversations, isn't it? Being engaged in those and thinking, because I talk about it as a very long tail. I think it's a very long tail in the L&D sector. So at the front of it, you've got people pushing ahead, doing interesting stuff. You then got people a bit behind it who are doing bits of that, and they're talking lots about it. And as you go further down, you get less and less talk and exploration around the new stuff and the ideas and how it should be. And you have people doing just putting it on because that's how it's done. So you get towards that end of the tail and there's no thought, there's no discussion around it, and it's just not having any impact. It's literally, pretty much pointless. And I think that's a real frustration for many people, and for me, it really frustrates me. So I suppose since I've come into L&D fairly recently, in that sense, I feel like I can evangelize. I feel like I'm evangelizing sometimes with people about it.
And I think it's interesting you mentioned that. I put a post out on LinkedIn last Friday about actually is L&D needed anymore. It was a provocative post just to kind of see the feeling of it. And actually, what you've kind of just mentioned there, the real far end who are kind of, well, it's just always done. There's no thought. There's just no passion in it, and we've just always done it that way. I think they're the ones who are going to be disappearing. So I talk about this L&D, and I was like, you can rip L&D out now. And then, I mean, the logical business side of me, if I was asked that question, I'd say, actually, the L&D team needs to be remastered. But the provocative kind of side of me was like, rip L&D out now. Your marketing comms, your product designers, they will all come up with better solutions. But I think the people who you just mentioned on that far end, they're the ones who, if anyone, should be a little bit worried about that.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. As a thing, I mean, I'm not even sure I like the words learning and development. I mean, I don't mind the words per se, but
Yeah.
Yeah. But although having said that, my new colleagues, I've written a blog about this, must have bored them to death because I spent the last 3 months saying, oh, I don't really like using this term. I don't really like that term. I don't really like using this word. But yeah, I think learning development doesn't really sum what we do up anymore. And actually, I borrow this mainly from David James, who talks about performance and capability, and I like that term. And actually, when we put our strategy together, I'm going to call it, I think, if I'm allowed to, a performance and capability strategy, because it does what it says. I know there are arguments about whether it should be performance, because that means lots of other things as well. But there's no ideal, is there? And you have to go with what works. I'm a big believer in language making a difference. But the other thing about the long tail and people having to be aware of their own future and the organisations is. I find this really curious. I think learning and development is so often let off the hook.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think people that run organizations and businesses, successful ones who are very, capable, intelligent, good people who are able to run them, so they are doing well, they would not treat other bits of the business in the way L&D is treated, in the sense that they would be challenged, they would be asked for value for money, they would be checked out as to how it's impacting on the business performance. So often in L&D, from my limited experience and people I talk to, very little of this happens. They just don't get asked. And L&D, long as L&D is delivering something that seems to fit with the business, and maybe there's some metrics, sometimes called vanity metrics, around numbers, bums on seats, time, hours, stuff like that, then people seem satisfied often, or business leaders seem satisfied. And I struggle. I'm not a business leader, though I have led a bit of a college before, but I don't get that. I struggle to understand how L&D so often is just like, okay, get on with it. And why are we not tested out? Why are we not challenged?
And I think, yeah. So my kind of my post was kind of, if the L&D function was kind of summed up as one person in the organisation, would the business have sacked them already? And it's provocative, yeah, and kind of the reason and my reasons why I've kind of put in there. But it's going back to kind of what you said, they're kind of getting let off the hook. It's a bit like that underperformer who everyone knows is underperforming, but he's a nice guy. So maybe.
It's a good analogy. It's a good analogy. It's a blind spot. But you know what? I'm not even sure it's people don't think we're performing. I think sometimes there's the case is they think we are performing, but just they don't know what we're meant to be doing, or they're not. It's a strange one. And it's strange it's persisted for so long. Although that tide is turning, I would have thought it would have turned a long time ago and faster.
Yeah.
So I think business leaders, organisation leaders don't help with the long L&D tail, and of course I guess I've got to say it as well. Some people in L&D don't help with the long tail either, because they're just perpetuating what's always been in place. And I should emphasise before I sound high and mighty that this is tough stuff, some of it, and I don't feel at all that. Not remotely that I want to be where I'd like to be yet, for me or my organisation. But I take, but I like to think that I'm, learning and talking and reading and trying and engaging to help move that on. And I think that's all we can ask anyone to do, really.
Yeah, and it does sound like we beat L&D up a lot of the time. We have to remember, L&D, 80% of what we do is great stuff. And I use us, of what we do is great. There's so much good stuff what L&D do. But, it's easier, as is always the case on social media, to pick up on the negative or the constructive or whatever. But I think it's important that we highlight that we are fundamentally L&D lovers, and it's an easy one to pull things apart. I kind of always say it's the easiest thing in the world to pull apart somebody else's work, and I'm sure these conversations aren't kind of exclusive to L&D. I'm sure marketing and finance and whatnot and are having similar conversations in some way. So it's a funnier world, I think, with L&D, but an interesting one, definitely. So I'm going to just do a bit of I'm going to fire some words out at you, and what I want you to do, Mike, is tell me what comes to mind to these words.
Oh dear.
Okay, and yeah, are we ready? I think I've got 4 for you. So the first one, it's not really words, it's numbers. 70, 20, 10.
Oh, I know that one as well. I know the answer. For me, that's about recognizing that people develop within the organization across every aspect of their time and work there. And for me, it's about getting people, this is what I've alluded to, I guess, already earlier on. It's getting people to really recognize that learning takes place through experience every day. It takes place with learning with people and developing with people, and it does take place with more sort of structured courses or resources. But for me at least, it underpins what we're about. Though I would say the actual numbers, I've come to a view that the numbers aren't that useful anymore. I've come to a view, and I tend not to use numbers anymore. I use them as shorthand with colleagues, I guess, but generally use different words like experience, people, and sort of structure to help kind of explain what they are, because I think people might get too tied up with the percentages, which I don't think helps the overall discussion.
Okay. The next one, digital body language.
Digital body language. Oh, goodness me. I think for that, I would say that's, for me, I think what comes to mind is the way in which we shape a sort of digital learning within the work we do. Kind of, for me, what that looks like, kind of what the balance. Digital learning, digital is so huge. We talk about it sometimes as a thing, and it's so big and potentially complex and impactful. So for me, it's kind of the sort of the way we're shaping that to fit around the particular business's needs, i.e. what bit of digital do we think works and what bit of digital is particularly useful for the organisation's needs. Yeah.
Okay. 2 more. Digital transformation.
Well, it's a really big buzz term, I guess, in recent times. For me, I think it's about not massively dissimilar to the previous bit, I guess, but it's about really shaping. It's recognizing that actually digital has a massive impact for us to develop in our lives, in our busy lives, in our disparate lives, in our connected worlds, and that there's a need to, and that actually our digital life is massively huge as part of our personal life. And for me, I think sometimes in a work context, we haven't always caught up with how people use digital in their personal lives, and we haven't kind of capitalized on everyday digital skills that people have for work. So people don't give a second at looking at resources online off in their personal life through Twitter or maybe through Facebook. People connect in digital ways. People learn through YouTube and all other ways. We use videos all the time. We might use memo stuff for some of the apps we use. But the question is, do we take that into our everyday world? So the transformation bit for me is particularly around capitalizing on the skills people actually have day to day and becoming more confident with using them in the workplace.
Okay. And the last one is leadership.
Oh, absolutely critical. Critical for me. Leadership is sometimes done very well and sometimes very badly, and I've experienced that myself in places. And for me, leadership, two things I want to say, I guess. One thing is that the role of a leader is massively impactful on everybody in an organization. Leaders are very visible. Leaders cast a shadow that everyone sees, whether they realize it or not. And the leaders in an organization absolutely help to shape the culture, the way we do things, how things work. And that shadow is powerful. And from a learning development perspective, I believe a big role that we have to help people is to recognize that shadow, to help them develop the skills, understanding, insight into how they operate and how they cast their shadow to help the organization develop and be the organization they want it to be.
Okay, good shout. So, yeah, I don't go easy, do I? So, I guess I want to dig into a little bit more about you really, Mike. And, when we go for interviews and we've got to show this best self and we've got to show every great example we've done. But I just think one of the best questions we should be asking is actually show me what your failure CV or your failure resume looks like. So I guess putting that question over to you, Mike. If I was to ask you what's the one biggest thing what stand out on your failure resume, I'm saying resume but CV, what would it be?
You think about particularly okay, well, I'm thinking about my earlier life. If I think about work particularly,
sure.
I'm going to say two things actually, because I think it ties in partly to my log line actually. So the first thing is messing up my O levels, and I'm that old. It were O levels, kind of once in a half times, and then even my A levels a little bit as well. And at age 19 was like, I think my parents despaired is what I was going to do. So there's that, and maybe revisit that if need be. But then much more recently, in the last 10 years or so, is leaving a job, a senior role as a vice principal, or deputy principal actually, in a sixth form college in Manchester, leaving that after about 15 months because I decided I couldn't do that job in that place with various reasons. And that was a record. There's lots of reasons for that, and I won't put it all down just to me. But in the day, it's my decision, and I think leaving a role after that short period of time in a high-profile role in that organisation, where I wasn't able to do and to make the change and the differences I would have expected of me and did beforehand and has subsequently, but I didn't in that role, was really tough. And though I've succeeded in another college in a similar role after that, and I absolutely completely feel if I needed a vindication, I've got that. I still, in my head, I still think back to that point 8-9 years ago, and I keep replaying, well, what could I have done differently? And of course, the stuff I've learned in the subsequent years, I would absolutely approach that role differently. Whether I would have stayed there longer than 14 months, I don't know. There's reasons why I probably wouldn't have been able to, but actually, I look back and think, could I approach things differently, and what would I have done? As challenging that would have been, it's very interesting. So that kind of stays with me quite a lot actually from that period, and it's kind of, I guess, propelled me on as well.
Okay, nice. So kind of flipping that on its head, and maybe this can be a personal success actually, but what's been the most recent personal success you've had? And again, that can be, you can be personal or professional. It's up to you, Mike.
Oh well, I'm gonna go for personal actually for this, because a year ago, and again just the other week, I ran a half marathon.
Oh, nice.
And so I ran my first half marathon last May, and I ran my second half marathon 2 weeks ago. And I was not a runner until 2.5, 3 years ago. And as I wrote in one of my blogs, I think the week after, which actually I'll tell you what I called it. So I'm quite impressed with that. I called it. It's not a half marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a half marathon. Well, it's a half marathon, not. So I got that wrong, haven't I? It's not a half. Anyway, you get the gist. Oh, maybe you should edit out. That was awful. That's what happens when you try and go for some self-publicity, isn't it? So where was I? Yeah, no, I ran a half marathon. I was never a big runner, but I 3 years ago I got on a treadmill, and after about 2 minutes had to stop, so I was knackered. And then I eventually ran 10K a few years ago, and then ran a half marathon last year, which I never would have ever anticipated doing. And I actually made that decision one November when I was running in the pouring, awful sheets of rain and freezing cold, and somehow it was in that moment when I was doing that, just doing a 5K, 10K run, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for the next May's half marathon. And I think actually that links a little bit to my own kind of work thinking. I gave you an example a minute ago of a really tough time in a college 9-10 years ago, which kind of scarred me, I think. But I was determined I was going to use that and do well and be good and be successful in whatever that means. And by whatever measures people want to use, I was successful. And for me, that was really important. So I think for me, I don't know. I don't quite know. I don't always know where that comes from, actually, from inside me. I don't know where it comes from, but it comes from when I need it, and I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, right? It doesn't matter. It's kind of part of you, and it's there when it needs to be there, I guess. It's probably the best way to look at that. I think so. Is there any plans for any more runs, or are you looking at a marathon, or are you going to stick with the halves?
I have made a very clear and conscious decision. There is no way anywhere till I'm running a marathon. I tell you, you get to the end of a half marathon, the idea of turning around and doing it all over again is like, nope. Actually, I don't. But I don't actually have. Someone says to me, if you decided that, then it won't happen, and they may be right. But actually, I don't have the motivation for that. I'm really happy at running a half, and I've put myself in for the Manchester half in October, because actually I kind of someone that needs kind of targets to work towards, get me out running again. So over the summer I'll be kind of continuing running and getting myself ready for that in October. So I'm going to do that, and you know what? I've learned so much about myself. Well, a bit about myself actually as I've been doing running, because I've kind of have started to enjoy it. And it's interesting actually. It's in my network of L&D. There's quite a lot of us run. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of support from people out there that do that, and it's really finding it really helpful. I kind of found that I do enjoy it, and I find it as a really good time to have some space in my head. And so I don't listen to music. I don't listen to anything. I don't like having headphones on. I don't want to have anything jabbering into my head when I'm running. And it's probably the only time. So I'm really easily distracted, like massively. Anyone who's worked with me at all could probably tell you that. That's why open plan offices are so bad, I tell you. But I find it a really good space just to think things through. And I have some of my best ideas when I've been running, blog titles, overcoming some challenges at work, thoughts around pieces of design. And I've been really surprised by that, actually. So, that's been good. It's been good, actually.
So when you run, do you run? So when you do your half marathons, are you just doing it for the sake of them, or are you trying to beat your last time now? How do you have that as a competition goal now, or is it just a case of actually just do it for the pure enjoyment of it?
Well, I think most runners would probably tell you they're trying to beat their time. I would suggest they're not necessarily trying to beat anybody else, but I think they're trying to beat themselves. So yeah, I was really pleased, and I beat my time this year significantly more than last year. Though it was cooler. Last year was boiling hot, but nevertheless, I did a personal best this year. and was really pleased. And so for me, I am trying to beat it. And I did some specific training around running faster. Once I was convinced and kind of confident I had the distance in my legs, 21 kilometers, I then kind of did some work around pace. And you know what, actually, and I think there's, I don't know, without being too forced, there's some really good links here with workplace learning and the way we do and stuff as well. Because for me, once I became confident in how I could run, I knew I could push myself. So this year, for example, I knew even at sort of 5-6 kilometers, I could really push myself for a bit. So I knew I wouldn't tire myself out and think, oh my God, I can't go any further. I knew I could. And I remembered that and I learnt that and I knew it was fine. And as a result, I could push myself. And I think actually that's the case with work. When you get to know it and get to know what you're doing and you have confidence in yourself and your abilities, you know what you can push with and you know what you can kind of either get away with. I don't mean in terms of get away with in work, but get away with yourself, what you can do, what you can push yourself to do, what capabilities you have. So for me, I am competitive with myself. There's no doubt about that. And I actually enjoy that actually, so I'm not naturally a competitive person, actually. I'm not naturally, I don't, maybe Monopoly perhaps, or my computer when I'm playing backgammon with my computer. But I'm not naturally a competitive person, given the choice. But actually, being personally self-competitive, helps. And I don't know how long that can go on for, because, of course, as we all are getting older. So I don't know how long, despite the aging happening, we can continue to get faster. I don't know at what point they just reverse,
Yeah, where's that tipping point? Definitely. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so I guess maybe we can use the context of running. So, how many people turn up to these marathons? Roughly, do you know, round number?
The one I ran the other day, there were 5,000 running the half marathon the other week.
Okay, and then Adam has guessed, and let's just make up a number of 1 million people, just because, why not? But let's just say you have a billboard and all the marathon runners and all the guests and marathon runners are going to see this billboard. What message would you put on there? And it probably doesn't have to be anything towards running, but what message would you put on a billboard to shape 1 million minds?
Well, for me, I think it would patch into my kind of determination around having control over what we do. So I don't know, something like, this might sound, I don't know, a little bit harsh, but kind of, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, think about how you might change it. Kind of, whether that's work, whether that's personal. If you're not enjoying how life is, think about how you can change it. And that could come across a bit arrogant. I get life's hard sometimes and we can't change everything, but I think I've come from a perspective where I've taken control of things if need be. And I personally, when I was younger, I came out as gay, hadn't been married, and that was about taking control. In a work situation, I wasn't happy. I wanted to move careers. I took control there. So I consider myself fortunate to be able to do that, I guess, in many occasions. But yeah, I think I'd want to encourage people to not just be satisfied if things aren't good for them. Try and help them. Try and help themselves to really think if there's anything they can change to make a difference.
Really, really sound advice there. So I guess kind of, I want to dig a little deeper, and you didn't think we could go any deeper, and yes, we can.
Oh, goodness me, Danny! Whoa.
So I guess this is kind of more of a height, but I guess when I think a lot of people within L&D tend to have this curious mind. I think a lot of people in L&D kind of, we see this thing where the curiosity and the playing us disappears once we get older. And I think a lot of people in L&D kind of have managed to keep on to that. But taking you back to your kind of childhood, can you remember the first time you ever got in trouble?
You know what? An instance comes to mind in an instant. It shows how much that must be there for it to suddenly come to mind. I don't know if I should tell this now. Maybe. So I must have been about 7. and so that would be that would be class 2 class 2 in the primary school these days. And a teacher she was a really, Mrs. Hooper. I mean, she won't be around anymore. She was a war teacher. I mean, as in, she must have trained just around the war. And when I went to school, God, I make it sound like I must be 100 years old. Gosh. We are talking about the 70s, just in case anyone's wondering. But she was a good old-fashioned teacher, to say the least. And she had a sweet tin in her cupboard. And she was a tough teacher, really tough. And she made me cry sometimes, actually. We had to stand in front and doing times tables, recite them on our own in front of the class. I mean, this is not what you would call progressive education. But anyway, me and my friend, I'll just use first names. I doubt they're listening, but anyway, David. And we decided, and Scott, there's 3 of us actually, safety in numbers. We decided we would one break time raid her sweet tin. It was a toffee tin. It might be a toffee tin actually. And we raided it. We basically stole. That's no bones about it. We stole some toffees or bowl of sweets from a tin. And I probably wouldn't remember this, but actually she found out. We got into massive trouble. I actually think I got a slap on the legs, which of course means a teacher would be out of a job these days. But yeah, so it's funny that's in my mind, isn't it? I remember that quite vividly, actually, from a billion years ago.
Yeah, and I think, fundamentally, this is one of the reasons why, kind of for me, experience design is really important for me when I design. And I say design, I use experience design in the context of experience design isn't necessarily kind of this digital thing or this whatever. It can be an immersive experience or an experience what really pulls on your gives you that emotional jerk. And I think this is why we can remember our favourite teacher's name, or the teacher who slaps your legs, or the bully's name, or whatever. And it's kind of about how these experiences have on recall, and it's an interesting one. It's definitely an interesting one. So.
Yeah, no, and I just agree. I think memory is a good thing, and actually just done a piece of work recently with people where we've kind of really pulled on storytelling from the past and the history and the stories of people to really help, to generate that. So no, I agree. No one used that story though. Actually, it's the first time I've ever said that publicly to anybody. I bet nobody knows that. Anyone listening now will know.
Oh yes, they will once this goes out.
Danny, you really have dug deep. Goodness me.
So I guess kind of going around to this, I think a lot of us have read various books and whatever, and there's always a couple of books that really stand out. But if I was to ask you kind of, Mike, what book would you give to 5 people? And it could be a book where you think everyone should read. It could be a book where it's changed your life or your perspective on things. What book would you give as a gift to 5 people?
I mean, I often actually berate myself for not being a bigger reader. I should read more. I want to read more. I do read, as it happens, but not as much as I'd like to. And I see people on Twitter that are reading like 50, 60 books a year. And I'm like, I don't even begin to know how that happens, literally. But that said, there's a great Judy Cooper book out. No, I'm joking. There's a book that I read a while ago, which I enjoyed and I think pertains quite well to sort of the L&D world, which is a lot of people will know it, I have no doubt. A book called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. It's a well-read book in the L&D world, I would say. And to say I actually read it would suggest I read it from cover to cover, which I didn't. I kind of dipped in heavily. I heavily dipped into bits in the past, though it's actually something I'd be quite keen to look at again as I'm looking at my bookshelf. Might be one I pull off again to look at. But it's a nice read because what he does, and he actually, interesting enough, he wrote it originally in 1988. And then he updated it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And he gives lots of examples of things in everyday life that are designed bizarrely. Of course, in the 80s, he talks about things like, I don't know, VCRs, where when he updated it a couple of years ago, of course, no one would know what he's talking about. He talks about those sort of things, old-fashioned stuff. And he really talks about the design of things and products, doors opening properly, so making sure when we go to a door, we open it in the right way, not from the hinge, we push it rather than pull it, or vice versa. Things that kind of get in the way of the smooth running of our lives. And we probably experience it every day. I mean, one of the biggest things is sticking a USB stick in. How often do we get it upside down, even though we probably do it regularly, or pushing something into the USB port? It's those sort of things. And it really appealed to me because it's fun. And you're sitting there thinking, oh yeah, that's designed really badly. I hate it when that happens. And he also links in with sort of the element around kind of learning and how our memories work. And so for me, that stuff really works well with learning design because, of course, we are helping people to be better at doing their jobs. We're helping people. We're looking to design interventions, solutions, ideas, support businesses, whatever, in as straightforward a way as possible. And I'm a believer in trying not to make things complicated. And simplicity with a bit of thought as to how someone's going to use it and how it's going to impact on their day-to-day life, I think is really key when we're designing and working on ideas within our business, and ultimately how it helps us remember to do that. So so it's a book I'd recommend, very much so. It's fun to read, and it's got a lot of application to life and how we do our work.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I think the one thing what it does at the end is it kind of switches you on to the things what you've kind of got so used to dealing with in life. And when you talk about USB stick and whatever else, and the Norman doors and stuff like that, and the plugs in hotels, kind of when you push it down, but water goes on, it's a nightmare to. It's a great book, definitely. But
yeah, no, it's cool.
No, go for it, mate. Go.
No, so because actually the point he made, and this is so often the case. Actually, there's a point where he talks about the problems people often come up with are not the actual problem. There's a bigger underlying issue. And that resonates massively because how often do we get people come along to us and saying, oh, we got this issue, we got this problem. Can you solve it for us? Can you do something for us? And in reality, once you start having that discussion, that isn't the issue, is it?
Yeah.
It's something underneath that. And it's like, so I thought it was a nice link there.
No, definitely. So I guess kind of when, and you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, and I kind of want to take this one or two ways, so we'll probably not go in both. But when we talk about kind of, the design of everyday things, and actually when someone comes to us with a problem, actually we tend to come with what they perceive as their solution, and we get I think something as simple as this 5 whys. Why is it that? Why? I mean, you kind of slowly peel back the layers and stuff. But I guess what's the biggest problem? And maybe it's too early to say this in your current role, but in your previous role, what was the biggest problem you was facing?
Well, I would say. Well, I think. I mean, there's what thing that comes to mind. This is more about how we engage people, I suppose. The biggest challenge, and I would say it's been in my last organisation, and even where I am at the moment, is around helping people around people. I suppose, take a better term, taking responsibility for how they develop at work. The ownership thing, I guess, because for me, and it ties into stuff we've mentioned already, if people are just expecting a kind of a solution, or be that going on a course, be that whatever, then people won't benefit from that, because you need to do more with something than just that. And I think ultimately for people to develop themselves, be able to work more smartly, requires them to really think about how they are themselves, how they're developing, how they're learning, how they're applying that learning. And I think it was definitely a problem in a company with 60,000 people in, which where I was previously. And going about trying to change that, I mean, literally, I I don't even know how you do that. In a company of 500 people where I am now, I think there's a greater chance to be able to do that. And it, is about size, and not just size. I think it's about size and about maybe open-mindedness around it and a culture. But I think that, and I think that frustrates me a lot, because I'm a learning professional, always have been, and of course, as you said, we're passionate about development and learning and ideas, and when other people see L&D, whatever you want to call it, as just that department that does this, and this, and not more than that. That really frustrates me professionally and personally, because I'm like, well, don't you get it? Don't you understand? If you take responsibility for yourself and you help with this, and you get involved with that, and you undertake your own sort of self-directed learning process, you'll be better. You'll be even better. You'll be able to progress further, or maybe get a next job, or be better at something, or get a promotion, or whatever people are looking for.
Yeah.
So for me, that is a massive challenge. And if anyone's cracked that, a message on a postcard kind of thing, and I maybe we never really crack it, but I'm not suggesting with that it's just all about other people getting it. We in L&D absolutely have a role to help people develop that. And I guess that goes back right to the beginning, when we're talking about people when they're not coming in for onboarding, grabbing them at that moment. But it is a mindset. It's a massive mindset change to help for people to say, yeah, don't look upon this as L&D and the function that will help you. Just do it when you want it. We're in partnership, and we're going to try and help you together to help you be perpetuating your development, I guess. Yeah. So that I think for me that underpins so much what we're trying to do.
Okay, and I guess it's interesting you mentioned kind of like with engagement and stuff, and kind of in a very disjointed segue, I want to get onto kind of social media. So you're an active kind of person on social media, and you kind of touched upon it a little bit later. Kind of this kind of opened up a whole new world. So I guess the first part of this kind of social media part is, do you see social media as a net positive or a net negative to society?
I absolutely see it as a net positive. I refuse to allow myself to be drawn into just the negatives. As people say, ultimately social media is in itself is a neutral tool. It's how people use it. And as anything throughout life, throughout history, we can look at. People didn't like the television originally; they thought it would be evil. They probably said the same about the radio. And even printing presses, you go back hundreds of years, printed word. So no, I think it's a net positive. There is, of course, absolutely no doubt there's some massive challenges with it. And the damage people use it for. Now, it's not those people weren't having those thoughts before, but just, of course, it's so much easier to get them out there. And for me, the damaging stuff is around how individuals can be treated. I think it's a brilliant thing for connecting people, for sharing ideas, for reaching out, for opening up people's eyes and minds and thoughts. I think that is mind-blowing. It's actually so hard to imagine that we didn't have it. Well, some of these things just 10 years ago. I pinch myself to think it's all that new. But I think it really does open up a world and of opportunities. I think it can literally change people's lives depending how they use it. But of course, anything, we have to be really mindful of the sort of pernicious people that are using it for bad means. And like anything, I would say social media. I know it's been around not that long, and as a result, we're still learning how to use it. We're still working out what it really means to us as a world, as a society. And maybe we're a bit too harsh on ourselves sometimes to be thinking it's still, it yields so many problems. That's not to say we shouldn't be dealing with them now. We should be, but I think probably we have to recognise we're still in that embryonic stage of it. Because I would imagine you jump 20, 30, 40 years ahead. I mean, I can't even begin to think what that would look like. But we will look back on this and see it as, those early teething troubles we were having, in the same way, as I said, telephones and TVs and video games or whatever were having teething problems back in the day. I think it presents a massive opportunities for our lives. Really does. And yeah.
So kind of thinking about this social media, and I kind of I guess thinking with an L&D perspective. But what's your take on kind of L&D as a general, not necessarily maybe not as your PLM, but as a general? What's your take on L&D's presence of social media on social media?
Well, it's hard for me to be. Well, I guess you're not asking me to be objective, really. But I mean, I'm stuck. I feel very much integrated into it. For me, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing today. In fact, I know I would not be doing today what I'm doing if it hadn't been for social media and for the L&D network within whatever you want to define that. The world of L&D, the world of HR that use social network and the people that use it. I wouldn't be where I am in terms of my work. I wouldn't be where I am in terms of a lot of my thinking. And I definitely wouldn't be in a place where I'm able to get challenged and challenge myself on a daily basis. I don't think that's, if I think back to my old career in education, of course social media existed, but actually I didn't use it very much, and I don't know what its presence was. So it's hard for me to make a comparison for that for me. But for me, I get the opportunity to get challenged and challenge others and help move things forward. So I think it's a good world. I think the L&D network, the social media is a very good world, and I've actually had my mind blown by it in the last nearly 3 years. It literally did change my life. Stumbling across a Friday morning L&D chat. So I'm a massive fan of it, and it gets me a bit when people say, "Oh, I shouldn't do this." Of course, people say, "Oh, I don't really like Twitter. I don't really get it. I don't really like it." I have to sort of hold myself back a bit, really, because I could stand on a table and start talking for an hour about it, which I tend not to do. Well, I have done. But LinkedIn and other things, any network really, it's that's just my network. Twitter particularly is my network of choice, platform of choice.
So given Twitter's your kind of platform of choice, what 3 people would you recommend everybody should follow?
First of all, David James. David, actually, I came across David a couple of years ago and listened to him on a podcast, and he talks masses of sense, and really like and really taken a lot of ideas from him, and he's a great guy. So Dave, and actually on Twitter, he's David in Learning. If you're looking for me as well, I like the sort of stuff Twitter does, which is kind of quite visual as well, and I like sort of different things it sort of yields up. And Rachel Burnham on Twitter is great to follow. Rachel Burnham. I think it's Burnham L&D, and Rachel is very renowned for many things, but including her sketchnoting. While I haven't really fully adopted sketchnoting, the way it's used, where she uses it to record thinking, ideas, events is great. And I think there's some great visuals there that people could kind of find and see and use and get a head around. Third person. I mean, there's so many people, there's millions of people that really influenced me. I find that I really love. I would also say Julie Drybra, who is at Fuchsia Blue on Twitter. Julie is a sort of facility. Well, she's a million things, and actually she's just finished 21 Days of Writing, and she's written some brilliant, beautiful stuff, as well as being great in the L&D, HRE worlds for challenge, for ideas, for creativity, and she inspires me with all sorts of different ways of thinking in terms of my design that push me outside of my own comfort zone. If if people don't follow those three people, they will, and they do, and if they started to, they would, get a lot of good thinking, good ideas from very different kind of sort of perspectives.
Okay. So this is kind of more about you. So, do you even like yourself, Mike?
This is a tough hour, Danny, isn't it? It's a tough gig, this one. Yes.
Okay.
Something, as you may have picked up, I've, for me, it's really important about, doing, being as happy as I can, doing stuff, taking control of my life, I guess. So I'm at a stage where I would say very happy with myself. I do like myself. I mentioned earlier in passing that I did really badly at school. I mean, I did abysmally bad. I don't know why. Still to this day, I don't know why I did so badly. I mean, I don't know. And I, ended up eventually going to uni and doing various things at undergrad level and then postgrad level and various stuff, and doing well in my careers. And that I'm not saying that to kind of be big-headed. I'm saying that from a perspective of I didn't think probably years ago although I liked school, I enjoyed going to school. I thought I was average. I was actually above average student. I just goodness knows what happened with my exams. No idea. I was too lazy. Actually, that's the bottom line. I was too damn lazy. I used to go to Lord's cricket ground actually and try and revise by watching cricket. I mean, like, how's that going to work? But basically, so I had to kind of do something to really sort of show myself, and maybe others, but ultimately for myself to do stuff. And I think as I've gone through my career as well, having been in a job I didn't like and made a move, being successful in that second role, that other role I had as a senior role in colleges, then made a transition into the world of L&D, which I had to say took me a while. Moving across the commercial world into a new field took me quite a while because, people at recruiting didn't really get it. With massive support from people in my network. And I've had to really kind of work, push myself internally. That's where the running came from, I guess, even though it was pouring rain and making decisions I took, pushing myself into doing things I maybe don't feel completely comfortable, taking roles, even one I'm in now, that's fairly, it's quite going to be challenging and ambitious, because for me, I believe in myself. That said, I definitely have a dose of imposter syndrome, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But I kind of work with that, I take it fairly lighthearted. I'm a fairly lighthearted person, and I don't let much kind of really get me down. I kind of just kind of, put it in a box where I can and deal with it. But I feel pleased. Yeah, I feel I'm happy. And I think if I'm happy, that means I like myself. And if I like myself, I feel happy. And I suppose I feel quite chilled, which is good because I know that's not always possible to have in life. So I feel very lucky indeed. But that's where I am at the moment. Hopefully can stay there.
Good, lovely put. I think it's interesting you mentioned imposter syndrome. I deal with that quite a lot. I think, what I found the easiest way to deal with imposter syndrome is kind of let people know you've got imposter syndrome. Like, just next time, just try it honestly. Just say, whoa, this is a bit, and I kind of make light of it and acknowledge it rather than kind of put it in this back pocket and kind of hope it'll disappear. But it's an interesting. I think we all have a bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it's talked about a lot actually. I think that's probably the case. So I don't give myself a hard time over it. I mean, I even tonight I've been thinking, well, why would Danny want to talk to me for an hour? Like, when given, people you have and will have on the podcast, But I'm like, but I'm like, it doesn't matter, because I think ultimately, for me, if I've got a belief in that I can do something, that imposter syndrome kind of just dissipates, and I think it's that balance, isn't it, between. So I think imposter syndrome is just sometimes just a feeling for me. Okay, for me, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
And then when I sit down and think it through and think, well, if I even give it this much time, and I don't always, but sometimes I might, and I rationalize it, I think, well, actually, no, that's not there, and it just disappears, really, as if it wasn't there. And I think I probably try and attack or approach these things in a fairly pragmatic way. So I generally am pragmatic, and kind of that sort of approach works for me. So, but I think it's good people to know people have that, because it helps other people. And I definitely like it when other people say that. It makes me feel much more assured, particularly when people who are also doing things that I'm impressed with, and I'm like, wow. It's part of life, I guess, isn't it? Possibly.
Yeah, and it's interesting with this podcast. I see no hierarchy in people and my guests. At the end of the day, every person's fascinating to me. So, there's no hierarchy. This conversation is just as valuable to me as the next conversation. I'll learn.
And my head tells me that. Exactly, my head tells me that, even if my original heart didn't. So you're right, absolutely, yeah.
So I guess kind of going full circle on this and kind of wrapping it up now. So at the beginning, I asked you, kind of what it is you wanted to be when you grow up. And as you know, Mike, we never really stop growing up, and we constantly develop. So if I was to ask you the question now of, Mike, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you say?
Oh, I want to be doing stuff that is helpful and impactful. Whatever that is, I want to be doing stuff that is contributing to something. And I want to be enjoying what I'm doing. I want to be motivated, and I want to be feel like I'm developing with that as well. I'd say that's a cop-out answer, but that's what I strive for.
No, I don't think that's a cop-out. I think that's a great answer. I think some of the most interesting people who I know, who are like 50, 60, whatever, still don't know what they want to be, and I think that's perfectly fine. So I guess kind of going full circle, at the start I asked you to pick 4 questions, and it's dead simple. These numbers are kind of associated to a random list of items, and the idea is you're on a desert island and you found these 4 items, and your items are a thread, so I'm assuming like a kind of cotton thread, a plastic fork, a button, and a sponge. What are you doing with these items, Mike?
Where have you... I'm just trying to visualise them, actually. A sponge, a button, a plastic fork, and a thread. I would set them as a challenging task for... you have to say if I'm on my own on that desert island. Am I on my own?
Yes, definitely.
I would set myself, I don't know, I would find some animals to do some development with and set them a task to use those and do some group work. I haven't the faintest idea. I haven't got a bloody clue.
Perfect. So Mike, where can people find out a little bit more about what you're up to, and kind of where can we follow you?
So the best place is on Twitter as @MikeShawLD, and on LinkedIn, of course, as Mike Shaw. But Twitter is where I would particularly love to engage with people.
Awesome, Mike. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Danny, thank you. You've made me work damn hard, so thank you. I'm knackered now, but thank you. It's been great. Thank you very much.
No worries. This is the reason why I never have people come on the second time round. They just, once they've been on first, they're like, no, I'm never coming on it again. It's fine.
I need a stiff drink or sleep or something now.
Cheers, Mike. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Cheers. Thank you.